See you later, partner!
I like Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is a great game. I mean, it's not perfect either, but that's what I discussed on my most popular video. Regardless, I am glad to be someone who can look past its faults, because behind all of that, there's an exciting battle system, beautiful maps to explore, and an interesting world that I just couldn't get enough. And I think Monolith Soft thought so too, because shortly after its release they announced Torna The Golden Country. So, what exactly are we dealing with today? Torna is an expansion to the world of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. It was revealed during the Nintendo E3 presentation of 2018, and released just a few months after. This didn't come as much of a surprise, because its existence had been known for quite a while. Xenoblade 2 released along with an expansion pass which included pretty standard stuff. Items, more side quests, and new blades. But the main thing of note was brand new story content, which eventually ended up with the name of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Torna The Golden Country, a story set 500 years before the events of the main game. Most interesting was that said content will also release as a standalone physical copy. Now, why would they go that far for one expansion? Wouldn't it be easier to just release it digitally? I'm not sure, but I gotta say, that move honestly got me super interested in trying it. And that's funny, cause I wouldn't get to own this game until 2 years later when my friend Isaiah gave it to me as a gift. And it still took me a whole year to start it. But once I did... So what makes Torna so great, and why should you consider playing it? I could give you a small list on all the things I like, but that might take me too long. So let me just give you a more general idea. As I said previously, Torna is a prequel taking place during the events of the Aegis War. But what makes it interesting is that it's not something mandatory for you to understand what's going on in the main game. Torna doesn't do anything you don't know already if you play 2. The story progresses just the way you will expect it, which means that... But it's still a great story! Torna doesn't have to bring new twists and plot devices. It uses its pre-established concepts, characters and locations and fleshes them out even further. Take for instance the main cast. You have familiar faces like Jean and Mitra. They're not so out of character as we knew them already, but it's so nice to get a different perspective of them. I love to see a side of Jean before he became a different man. I really liked how Mitra was a bigger bitch in this game and everyone calls her out for that, like... Every character really has it against her in this game. Do you remember how Bridget always carries a diary? I wouldn't be surprised if the events of this game made her write "Mitra's a bitch, Mitra's a bitch, Mitra's a bitch" over and over in her diary. But more than just comedy, she does develop because of that, and that made me appreciate her more as a character. Then you have Malos. Fucking Malos! As if I didn't like him a ton already! Torna really segmented him as one of the greatest Nintendo villains out there. He steals the show in every cutscene he's in. You also have characters like Adam and Laura, who were more of plot devices in the main story. But now, you get the opportunity to know them better, be more familiar with these people. And I feel they did an excellent job with them. It's no stretch when I tell you that Adam became one of my favorite characters in the whole series. And he's not even the main protagonist. In general, I love the main party. I thought they were all incredibly charismatic and had believable dynamics. There's even a new camping mechanic, where you can craft items, level up, and have optional conversations. I will always go there after an important event just to see what flavor text these characters could deliver, just for the sole fact that they are very enjoyable. And I think this is one of the game's biggest strengths. Even when you know what will happen and nothing is exactly new, it's a story so well told through its characters so you're hooked on it from beginning to end. Monolith Soft has always had a knack for great narratives, and Torna is no exception. In some ways, you can say it's even better than 2's. Now, I want to remark, I love the story of 2. But as you know from my video, it has a bunch of problems like the constant tonal whiplashes. What I like about Torna is how it is better paced. It's super straightforward and focused, but it still knows well when to change the tone, and most surprisingly, it finds the right times to deliver comedy. I'm serious, there was not a single moment of Torna that made me cringe. The story of the game was so enjoyable that I was so afraid to continue. I'm not kidding. I fucking knew what was gonna happen, and I didn't want to get hurt. I got so attached to these characters and I was enjoying the story so much, there just came a point where I didn't want to see the end of it. That speaks lengths on how well done it is, but still. Eventually I had to start that final battle and then The gameplay? Do you need me to go over that again? I love it. It's so fucking good. It's genuinely one of my favorites in any JRPG. In essence, Torna has the same combat system from Xenoblade 2, putting a huge emphasis on drivers, blades, sort attacks and arts, where the player must always take into consideration simple mechanics such as elemental arts, elemental affinities, pouch items, affinity charts, driver combos, blade combos, fusion combos, HP barriers, cooldown periods, party gauge, chain attacks, elemental bursts, damage multiplier, full bursts. Yep, I know I did the same joke again, but it still applies. Understanding the core gameplay is still a challenge on its own, but it's not as bad here. For example, you can actually read the tutorials again. That's an incredible improvement that the main game needed so badly. But on top of that, there's a new twist where you control both drivers and blades, with them switching between attack and support positions, and each of them have their own arts and elements. When you switch between them, every character has a specific effect that helps perform driver combos. Jin can use topple if the enemy already has break. If Aegeon switches in, he can follow up with launch, and Mitra can finish off with her smash effect, and that's so fucking cool! I never tire of it! Drivers now also have elemental affinities, so it's possible for them to take part in blade combos, which, by the way, can now be performed in any order you want. In the past, you could only make combos based on specific elements, but since Torna doesn't offer much variety in team building, which I'll get into later, you can now get elemental orbs with any combination you want, and you still have critical routes, which are identified through their unique names, and successfully pulling them off rewards the players with unique animations and extra damage. While Torna lacks in playable characters, it makes up for it by offering a different approach to combat. The battles in this game are way faster, which require new strategies to overcome them, and honestly, I felt the difficulty was harder at times. Even when I was levels above an enemy, they still gave me a rough time, but I liked that. It forced me to think fast so I could get those combos I wanted. It created a ton of tension that kept me completely focused, but also made me incredibly satisfied after every battle. And once again, the weight of the combat is such that you really feel that oomph at every moment. No matter how many times I see the screen for fusion combos, it always feels great. It's like the game is telling me, hey, your strategy made this happen, you're doing good. Earlier I mentioned that the game falls a bit short in terms of team building, like, you can only change the elements of the drivers, and trust me, two of them will always be earth and electric, because there's no blades for that here. This happens thanks to one particular change, the removal of the gacha system. And alright, this can be a boon or a detriment depending on who you are, but I personally like this change. Are more options to approach the combat a good thing? Sure, but I still like that Torna makes up for it with all the combos you have, the addition of new mechanics, and the fact that every character is very useful and equally fun to play as. But more than just combat, this also affected the exploration. Remember how I mentioned in the Xenoblade 2 video that the random nature of the gacha system could cause players to get stuck if they lack certain field skills? That's rarely an issue here! Field skills are still a thing in Torna, but thanks to the fact that you always have the same blades in your party, they're all you need to explore, and if you come across an obstacle you cannot overcome yet, just continue to do other stuff and come back when you meet the requirements. Unlike previously, where you had to resonate with core crystals, hope you get exactly the skills you need, unlock them in the affinity chart, and do a ton of unnecessary team management just for one obstacle. So not only is the combat and story more straightforward, the exploration is too, and the pacing is seamless. That's what I would like to say, but Torna's pacing is a bit weird. I mean, by comparison, it's better than 2's, but it's still shaky at times. So why is that? The game has a mechanic called Community, where you can gather NPCs to support you in your cause. You gain more supporters by completing side quests, and the higher your level, the more quests you unlock. It's super easy to understand, but here's the catch. Community is mandatory in order to progress through the story. There are points where you won't be able to continue unless your community is at a certain level. And this has me mixed, because on one hand, the side quests in this game are very enjoyable and don't drag on. And as a mechanic, community is pretty fun, it makes sense thematically, it feels rewarding to see more people being added, and I love how you can meet them again later to see how they're doing. But on the other, it's a pretty ass move to lock progress behind side quests. I mean, they're called side for a reason, but here the meaning of that name is just ignored. And I don't think the game emphasizes well how important it is that you grow your community. I myself didn't have much of an issue because I always do side quests in games, but you can't imagine how many people I have constantly telling me, please do side quests, please do side quests, please do side quests, in a traumatized tone. So I imagine they were part of the group whose fun was put to a halt because the game didn't do a good job to warn them. Regardless, that's honestly the worst part about the game, and it's not a deal breaker by any means, it's just... it can get annoying. And any other complaint I might have will just come off as petty, like... I love Torna, I really did. So by the end of it, after I stopped crying for 2 days straight, I realized I wanted more of this. I wanted to see more of the new characters, more of the story, fight more enemies, and even explore new areas. Unfortunately, the game only gives you 2 titans in total. Torna, which is a completely new area, and Gormoth, which is just a fraction of its full self in the main game. But that still wasn't that big of a deal, because exploration is just as enjoyable as it's always been. But you know, I realized, Torna doesn't have to do more than that. It's a game whose objective was to add more to the world of Forest, and it did that with flying colors. But what I respect the most is that despite its shorter length and smaller scope, it still didn't skimp on anything. The story is well delivered, the characters are endearing, the exploration is rich, the combat is exciting, and the presentation is... oh! It's so good! The colors, the menus, the sound effects, everything is of high quality. I know I haven't mentioned much of this before, but you ever notice how Monolith Soft always delivers some of the best action sequences ever made during cutscenes? I mean, just look at the choreography, the dialogue, even the music! Oh, the music! Torna recycled most of its tracks from 2, but what new additions they had are on par to some of the best tracks in the whole series. The battle theme, it gives me a rush of adrenaline every time the more ordained section kicks in. Or Auresco, the royal capital. That theme filled me with so much melancholy, but at the same time, it made me feel like... I think it's impressive that you can easily prefer this game over the main story. And that's no overreaction. I've genuinely seen fans say that this DLC is the superior game. So that begs the question of the video. Is Xenoblade Chronicles Torna better than Xenoblade Chronicles 2? That's a mouthful. I think there's so many things to consider in regards of which game is better. Because sure, at base they have the same gameplay, meaning both of them ask for more from the average player in order to understand them, which might be a bit discouraging. But there's a clear difference between the two. Torna is a very straightforward game that rarely loses time with unnecessary stuff. In comparison, it lacks in variety, but you can also see that as a good thing, because what there is already great. You don't have to overthink on things like team building, accessories, field skills, and all that. It's still quite challenging, but the entry bar is reasonably lower. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 presents a stark contrast in the amount of content it has. The game is exponentially bigger and longer. It has so much going on for it that every corner can present something of value for the player. But set quality can also be a double-edged weapon, as it can be perceived as overwhelming at times, and besides, for as much as I fucking love 2, it's a game that has so many variables that can define if you like it or not. Do you like long stories? Can you handle the terrible pacing? Are you okay with generic shonen anime aesthetics? Do you enjoy slice of life comedy that constantly changes the tone? Do you understand the combat? Are you willing to accept the random mechanics that can affect your experience?
You think this is bad? Just stick around for a bit.
I don't wanna sound like I'm exaggerating, but that's honestly the truth. Xenoblade 2 demands for too much in order to enjoy it. Its first impressions are not very good, unfortunately, but once it picks up the pace, and the player gets a better grasp of it, it becomes an extraordinary JRPG that proves why Monolith Soft are experts at what they do. So in the end it comes down to preference. Do you want a shorter, straightforward adventure that still offers a great challenge? Or are you the type who loves to explore for hours and hours, who constantly thinks about new battle strategies while you immerse yourself in a deep and long story? Personally, I don't think there's a lose situation here. Both are exceptional games in my eyes. But if I am to be a bit more realistic, if you want to delve into the world of all rest, I think you should begin with Torna. Learn all the basics, get familiar with the mechanics, and if you like what you see, you can try your hand at 2. Its combat is a bit different, but your previous experience should prove enough to quickly get the hang of things. And if you're worried about the story, it shouldn't be much of an issue. You can play any of these games without having to worry about ruining the story of the other. In the end, I really like both games, but for different reasons. You can almost see them as two sides of the same coin. Because while they might be different in design, they still carry that unique essence that made me fall in love with the series. Xenoblade Chronicles is a franchise that I checked out of mere curiosity. And because Shulk was allowed to Smash. And that let me enjoy some of the most unique and sophisticated JRPGs I've ever played. I love them! What else can I say after that? I'm sure that in a few months I'll be here pulling my hair, breaking my voice, and maybe punching walls over how incredible Xenoblade Chronicles 3 will be. So anyway, thank you so much for your time. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to support the channel, you know there's many ways you can do that. If we want to keep this project going, I'm counting on you guys. So, have a wonderful day, and take care everyone. I'll see you next time.